Thank you, and I want to keep that microphone on because I want this to be interactive. This has been far too passive from the audience perspective. I hadn't planned to introduce myself, but I think, first of all, really appreciate all the conversation that's been going on. Like, and the sort of variety of different topics that we've had has been phenomenal. I started in a small startup. You know, it was 15 million in software license initially, grew to like 50 million, growing and then getting acquired by IBM. So we went from sort of a 250 person company to a 429,000 person company at the time. My experience is sort of, once I got into IBM, has really been anywhere in the sort of 1 billion to 100 billion company range, with experiences at IBM, of course, BMC, Here Technologies, so try competing against Google Maps when you've got like 8% familiarity and they have 97%. And then most recently Genesis, where I'm at, and we're the leader in contact center software. And really it's an exciting area because of the sort of orchestration of entire customer experiences, not just those that are in the contact center. But with that, I've taken on through my career development a number of different teams. I've come into companies very often where we've had an established product marketing function, but the goal has been to transform it in some way. At Here Technologies, it was one where we had 3 different product marketing functions in 3 different business units. And the question was, how many of them report to you, the business owner? And the answer was 0. So it was strategic, but nobody had them reporting directly to the business owner. So the idea was to consolidate that into the marketing function, and then to sort of operate it in a sort of cross-company way. I'll bring some of that into the conversation. At Genesis, it was a case of a new CMO coming in, new CEO and CMO coming in, and then looking to revitalize the product marketing function. Here I sit with one foot. I report directly into the CMO's office and also into the line of business that I'm accountable for. So I sit in multiple different camps simultaneously. But what I wanted to do is sort of, get to the core of how we take, in my experience, it's generally been teams that have felt really unloved. They lack a strategic focus. They lack a strategic alignment. They just are sort of doing what they do on a regular basis, looking to change, but where leadership has viewed it as a strategic opportunity and is really investing in the team. And the first thing, this is no news to anyone here, but where we sit. We sit at the core of the business. It doesn't matter whether we reside in marketing or reside in product management. We sit at the intersection of these 3 functions, and it's critical when you start to look at pulse results. And these are my pulse results from a couple of different companies aggregated here. But generally, people in the teams that I've inherited feel really comfortable with their understanding of how their work contributes to the corporate strategy. 70% favorable, okay? These are sort of entry pulse results. But where we really suffer is then looking across the organization saying, we're doing a good job, we're aligned, but I don't see this mission playing out throughout the company, number one. And across the companies, no one's aligned and we're all sort of lacking focus on what those company objectives are. I mean, you can see that below company average of like 27 to 41%. The company average is not that high. We're not talking about 80, 90, 100% here. So we're well below. Some of these numbers were down at like 17, 18, 19% when I inherited the teams. And this has a consequence. And the consequence is, I find my work engaging 40% below the company average, okay? 60% below when it's like, I'm enthusiastic about the work that I do. It erodes sort of confidence. This organization's on track to perform its goals, 14 to 37%. Again, not below the total, below the company average. So if the company's not doing well, we're doing really well, really badly. And it would take a lot for me to leave the company? Hell no. I got one foot out the door every single day. So these are the organizations that I've inherited, and these are a little bit of sort of anecdotal feedback on some of the things that have worked for me. I offer them up. They may or may not work for you, but just these are some things that I've certainly focused on as I've come into organizations. So I want this to be interactive, okay, and certainly participatorial. So how many people here have teams that report to them? Okay? How many people aspire to have teams report to them? Okay? And how many people want to lead a product marketing function, given these numbers? Okay. So fewer numbers there, and for good reason, trust me. Okay, so let's think about it. There's two things that I really rely upon. One, and this is sort of as I've gone through my career, culture is everything, okay? And then secondly, how you operate is really critical to getting people on board. So we're going to explore these two different areas. I came from IBM, as I said, got acquired into there. Really transformational from my career perspective. I learned a lot about what the company is about. They're a research and development company. They are not a software company. They've got a massive portfolio of software, and finding your way in there is really important. But one of the things that I really took away from IBM was that they have this philosophy of treasure your wild ducks. And I'm a wild duck. I am not an easy person to work with. Joyce is at the back of the room there. She used to work for me here in town. We both lived here. We both worked for the software company that got acquired. She now works for me again. I think we started working together 10 years to the week after the first time I hired her a second time. But I am not an easy person, and I don't think that you should expect anybody else should be. You've got to find the treasure in everybody that works for you. I have a philosophy across my team about where we sit. You've got to build bridges, not walls. There is no plan that is your plan. There is only our plan. Okay, and as an example of that, when I present, I put my name, comma, on behalf of product marketing. I never present as me. I only present as a representative of our function. And then let the past inform the future, but never define it. Learn from what you've done in the past. Okay, take it, learn it, try it. But don't get stuck in it. And certainly if people have failed, don't measure them forever for it. Let them sort of progress and go on their journey as you should. So a couple of different things that I've employed here in terms of treasuring your wild ducks. When I join a company, or when we have a new person joining the company, I get them to all fill out this explanation of sort of who you are. Like, what skills are you bringing into the enterprise? Okay, where do you come from? What's that background? What are the sort of bona fides that you have? This is going to be bringing new competencies to the team. Secondly, who are you outside of the office? Like, what makes you tick? What's important to you? And be vulnerable, like sharing really personal stories about sort of where you come from, what you have failed at, what you have succeeded at. So really sort of break down this barrier between you as a leader and your team. It's critical that they see you as one of them, okay? So second point is operationalizing access. I ran a team from Chicago. About 40% of my team was in Chicago. About 40% was in Berlin. The rest were spread between the Netherlands, the UK, and Singapore, okay? When I would go to Berlin, or any of these locations, I would always set up breakfasts. Sometimes it would be one-on-ones, and it would be skip levels, but I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I would go for a walk, and then I would have somebody meet me for breakfast. Or I would have an open one for the entire team. Anybody can come. So I'd mix it up all the time, but it was really critical for me to sort of meet with them outside of the work environment and get to know them. And for me, that was a sacrifice. I mean, shit, I was flying over to Berlin every 3 weeks, okay? $120,000 in air travel on United alone. But it was necessary as we went through this transition at here. My boss happened to be in Berlin. Other members of our marketing leadership team were in Berlin, so there were other reasons to not just operationalize this with the team, but my peers and my boss on a regular basis. But it was a commitment that the CMO and myself made because we knew where those metrics were in the beginning, and we knew we had to invest my time in making a difference here. And then this, who's familiar with the blob bridge? No? This is a new tool that I've been employing. Okay, starting off one-on-one conversation saying, where are you at? Which number represents where you're at right now? How are you feeling about where you're at? Okay, and some of them most recently have been, I feel like I'm in this group, or I feel like I'm number 11. I want to be number 13, but I feel like I'm number 11. I haven't had anyone say I'm number 10 yet, okay? Growth mindset, yet. But it's a really good way to have a conversation, to start your one-on-one conversations, understand where your team is coming from, the person that you're talking about or talking with is coming from, and then get into the work of like, okay, so understanding where you're at, let's talk about what you've been doing and what you should be focused on and and what support you need from me. So some ideas there. I talked about building bridges. So here I think about it through the context of what is it that a seller needs to provide to a buyer. It's my personal belief that product marketing needs to know our buyers better than anybody in the enterprise. Okay, we need to own that, and somebody else mentioned that, maybe a couple of people did. But the idea of we need to understand the buyer. Well, here's some analysis that says a buyer expects somebody, a solution provider, to bring to them understanding about what's happening in their industry and the technology environment in which they're operating on. So we need to be a thought leader. We need to understand those trends, and whether we had the last presenter talk about having that knowledge and bringing that in, or whether you learn it. I've been in location technology software. I've been in cloud integration software. I've been in facilities and real estate management. I'm in customer experience now. You can learn these, but you've got to listen. You've got to listen to and talk to customers, get firsthand. So a big part of this that I find is talking to customers and going to those case studies and actually having the conversation, being the face on the other side of the camera, understanding their world. Okay. Secondly, buyers expect you to sell something. They expect that, not telling you how, but they're telling you that they need to understand your product and technologies. And this is where I think we typically do really, really well as a team. I heard a lot about collateral and templates and, all the standard bill of materials. I think we all nail this. I don't know that we all nail the top one, especially, and it was a great point, distilling the complexity into simplicity. Where's the market going? Okay, where are these technologies taking you? What's happening around your technology? And how does that inform where your technology fits in their overall solution? And then, I look at the entire sort of buying process. So understanding benchmarks and best practices, critical in the evaluation and decision phases of the buying cycle, as is helping build the business case. Okay? So this was a regression analysis that said, when buyers had a positive experience, this is what was provided by the solution provider. So understanding this, I'm not getting into the details of all the elements that you would deliver this against. I think we heard a lot of that over the last couple of days. But it's critical that we sort of think about what we bring to the organization. And then we're all functional experts. We're all coming in with knowledge of product marketing, but always be open to learning. Learn from the environment, your customers, learn from your company, learn from your leaders, learn from your team. Always, always, always learn. I talk about don't let perfection get in the way of progress. Get started on something, and we heard some of that. But here's what I do, is to look at the team and have them self-evaluate where they're at in their maturity. When I inherited this particular team here, this is how they scored themselves against dimensions like market strategy, go-to-market strategy, or content. I can't, the details I can't quite read here. But they evaluated themselves, and we were all in agreement that we're really based on that sort of at the repeatable stage. And we set a goal to get to the aligned stage, that we would all align around a common set of things. And then I'm big on experimentation, and that goes back to the sort of idea that, like there's no bad idea. Try it. And if you fail, celebrate it, okay? Because you learn something along the way. So, big in terms of like, just because we've tried it once, maybe we just need to adjust it. The Thomas Edison example about the light bulb. Secondly, focus on the operating model. So provide clarity. People need clarity around where they fit. And I tend to come in and be a little bit disruptive in terms of what the resources that I'm faced with, and then what the mission is. In the case of Here Technologies, as an example, those 3 teams, we had 105 products. Many of them were cloud services, like electric vehicle routing was one of them, okay? And so it was a case of taking the team and saying, okay, half of you are going to focus on the products. So everybody had been focused on the products. These people just got twice the load, okay? They handled the launches, the sales enablement, all that kind of stuff. But they also got a bit more I'll get to. The other half, I took and I said, you need to understand the markets. So we were selling maps that went into embedded navigation systems in vehicles. 4 out of 5 vehicles on the road in North America and Europe have a Here map in their navigation system. Okay, 3 times the revenue of Google Maps. They're the market gorilla. But these are automotive companies, and they have autonomous driving programs. Well, that's a different set of things that we can sell them. They're big manufacturers. They have supply chain issues. We can sell them solutions for that. They're also investing in these mobility programs, Car2Go you may be familiar with, and others, okay? And so, but those Car2Gos are competing against Uber and Lyft and Avis and Hertz and Lime and all of the other micro-mobility, and the public transportation systems, the trains, the buses, all of that. So if we start to think about these as discrete markets, urban mobility being one of those, fleet management, supply chain optimization, embedded navigation, autonomous driving, and we had an owner from within our organization that understood those buyers, that understood the priorities and which use cases, and worked with this team that owned the 105 products and mapped every product to every solution. We could now take to the market really specific sets of offerings that are solving very unique parts of their business. And that's what we did. And it was a case of then employing ruthless prioritization. Okay, we just talked about urban mobility. Do we go after the micro-mobility providers first? Do we go over the public transportation? And so I forced the team to think about, tell me about who all of the companies are. I want to see a name. John, easy. There's 28 of them. Great. I want them on a list. Next time I go to Berlin, I didn't get that list. Have you got them? Yeah. But there's now 56 names on that list. Great, even better. Next time is 104. Next time is like over 250. Okay, now I know that they've embraced the model because they're now specific. They know the name. I don't need to know the names. I never needed to know the names. They did, though. The owner of that market needed to know them by name. And we needed to track whether or not we were successful in engaging with every single one of those. But 250 or 300 or 500 is too many. So where's the priorities? Focus. I'd employ a rule of 3. You can do 3 things, and if you do 3 things, and if you do 3 things, they're equal, a third, a third, a third. If you do 2 things, you got flexibility. It could be 2/3, 1/3, could be 50/50, 60/40, but nothing ever goes below 1/3. Because if it does, you're never going to have the time and focus on it, okay? So that was really important. And then lastly is sort of having a formal communication strategy. So I provided a list of exactly what we got. This happens to come from an outside agency, Radford, I think it is, that we use as a company. But I went through and I highlighted all the things that are actually important in the role. Secondly, I evaluated everybody against the core competencies that we measure all employees, those are the blue ones, and all managers, the gray ones, so that we could, and also against all the competencies of product marketing, so we can know where our gaps are. In this particular case, a big one was developing talent. So I made a decision last year to invest in the Product Marketing Alliance core training. Everybody will get the same benchmarked understanding of their role and understanding of what good looks like, so that we can then have a conversation that everybody can participate in. So that's an example of sort of prioritization. Bit busy, but it all starts with what are your bookings or revenue target? Most companies will be either one, and then how are you going to get there? So this is really more about the collaboration than anything else. Market and competitive intelligence. Okay, what do we know? Where are those areas? What's the size of the opportunity in the ride-hailing versus the micro-mobility? Okay, which one should we go after first? Who, of course, are the buyers? And we brought in the founder of Car2Go, former CTO. And here he is. Ask him any question. Any question. Turns out they don't trust analysts. Okay, they think they're all pay for play. They go to a certain number of events. If you want to know who to track from a CTO perspective, go to their Twitter feed. Look at who they follow. Okay, little things like that then allowed us to also understand their needs, where we then mapped in those 105 products and all of our partner solutions as well. Okay, which is why the strategic alliance in the title. Then how do we solve for that? And that becomes a collaboration with product management and also the technical sales folks. You know, how we communicate the value of these offerings, and then how are we going to engage with them? Like, what are the events we're going to go to? What is the content we're going to bring, etc. That's in conjunction with the rest of marketing and with sales enablement. So it's this model that we sort of mapping out around understanding where the target is, understanding what the buyers, who the buyers are and what motivates them, using the work to understand data to understand the priorities and preferences that will then drive your engagement strategy, and then ultimately turning this into a circle that you learn from. I also employ a VSIM. This is actually a Cisco sort of model, but the two of the companies that I've worked for had former executives from Cisco, but it's very effective. What's the company mission, vision? We heard about that a little bit earlier, but even in the largest enterprises, this is important. What's the role of your function? So for us today, it's basically providing clarity and charity so our customers, our partners, and our company will all win, okay? And how we do that, we're trying to drive double-digit growth in terms of our strategy, and I didn't get into any of the sort of specifics. But core to who product marketers are is the sort of delivering, you know, both differentiated and fact-based positioning. Again, using the data and really understanding that. And then as a leader, this one's probably the most important one for me, okay? And having my leadership team focus on this. What are we going to do to drive integration across those other teams? What are we going to do to shift from repeatable to aligned? So what are we going to standardize on? I know there was a comment about Asana, I think it was, you know, Workfront or Asana. Like, how many projects are we actually using Asana for? Okay? Because that's a way to stay aligned. What are the people that have been trained on Agile, and how many of our projects are we applying Agile? Okay, so measuring it really specifically, and the kind of changes, like, do we have any of those? Remember, 105 case study products. How many case studies showcase more than one product? I want to see at least 50% in year one of all of our case studies crossing multiple different products. So that's how I sort of employ it. And then from a sort of operational perspective, this is what I have in meeting with my team and reporting to my boss. What do we do since we last met? What do we plan to do before we meet again? And it's very specific. I'm going to do this to achieve this. And I don't care what they write. What I care is that they know why they're doing it, and that they've got a good reason and justification in their minds that this is why it's important for me to be doing these things. What's not working and what's blocking you so that I can help you get through that. So this is a model that I employ. This was actually one where this is an actual one, I've kind of blinded it a bit, where I presented to my boss, you know, hey, this is what we've been doing across all the functions that I've owned and how we're doing it. I also have a monthly set of meetings. So in week 1 of the month, we talk about the initiatives, okay? All of those things that were in the VSIM, we as a leadership team will go through them and understand status. And then we also have a monthly all hands where I talk about, like, here's what's happening in the leadership, in the business, the changes that affect process or organization. Second week is operations, budget and HR. Have you done your performance reviews? Have you had the quarterly development conversations? Have you done all the sort of blocking and tackling? Have you, it's phenomenal how bad product marketers are at budget, at spending money, okay? Truly. Everyone wants the money and no one can get done spending it. So that's why we have a specific meeting there. But also once a quarter, I make sure that our team I meet with them and they meet with their teams to understand career development. One example, Joyce is at the back here, as I told you, she's working for me again as a direct report. Joyce wanted to get involved in advocacy. She is the co-founder of the Genesis Asian Impact Network. That was a personal goal of hers. And I sort of nudged her along. And so within 6 months, we formally launched this, and it will impact 12% of our total employee base, a minimum of 12% of our employee base. But it's really critical to understand the essentials of what the people that work for you are trying to achieve in their lives and be supportive of that. Campaigns, month 1, how well did last quarter work? Month 2, what's the plan that we need to socialize with our leadership team, particularly on the business unit side, as to what marketing will do, because that's what we're orchestrating, is the marketing response. Month 3, and that's to get their input. Month 3 is, this is the plan of record. This is locked and loaded. This is what we're executing on. And then rinse and repeat. So even though we do that on a monthly basis in the 3rd week of each month, the focus of it shifts from a retroactive look to a proposal to a plan of record. And we also have, in that same week, a best practices call to share both lessons learned positive and mistakes and learnings from that. It's also an opportunity for us to bring in other teams to talk about things that may be impacting. So getting that cross-functional alignment. And then lastly, the KPIs. All those metrics that you saw in the VSIM, how are we doing against them? What is the percentage of case studies that we have that are cross-portfolio? And so I've been fortunate. This has sort of worked. So understanding how my work contributes goes from 70% to 100% in my most recent. So this is in 1 year, okay? 100%. That includes new as well as, the team effectively doubled in size. I find my work engaging. 100% of them find the work engaging. I'm empowered to make decisions that affect that work. Remember, I don't care what they have. I just care that they know why they're doing it and that they're aligned. And then relative to sort of like, am I going to leave? Remember that statistic? So my manager cares about me as a person. This isn't just me. I mean, they all care about me. Who couldn't? But this is about the people that report into them as well and making sure that everybody feels that they're accepted. Are they accepted by their coworkers? This is one that we called out. We've got to get this to 100. It was at 100. It dropped in our most recent one. And then it would take a lot for me to leave the company, up 33%. So every single dimension changed with a double-digit improvement over each of the last 2 companies in the first year. So it is entirely possible. I think it's really important that you think about how to turn these teams into these high performers, and hopefully this has been helpful. So, question? Yes, thank you. Where's the microphone? I don't want anything submitted. I want live questions.
He has good projections.
Yeah. So I loved the weeks by week slide. That was awesome. In your quarterly discussions with each team member on professional development, obviously there's going to be some overlap with like current projects and initiatives that they have, but that is completely left out of that conversation.
It's completely left out of that conversation. It is purely career development.
Awesome.
Okay, there is no discussion about active work.
Yeah.
It is purely career development.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
Got one on the screen.
Yeah, while we're doing that. So I often fall into the trap of giving more time to underperforming team members. Any advice on adopting a more balanced approach? Lean into them. Like, don't walk away from them. I've had some really, really tough employees. I've had employees where literally every conversation has HR and has, over in Germany, they have this works council. So there's 4 of us in a conversation every single time. But at the end of the day, what happens in that meeting, you step out of that, and I'm just as invested. And that's why I was saying, like, don't let the past define the future. Work with them. Just recognize that right now they may need you. Eventually, you may have to make the decision that they're just not a fit, that they're, and probably the acid test there is, are they actually limiting the business? Are they impacting the business's ability? Sorry, Ali?
Thanks for sharing this, John. You had mentioned how you evaluated the skill set of your team at one point, and you had that chart with the green, like dark green, et cetera. Do you have individuals on your team evaluate themselves as well?
So I've done it both ways. I've had them self-evaluate. I've had in other cases, had the leadership team self-evaluate, but evaluate their teams. But generally, I favor self-evaluation. And it's blinded. So again, I'm not interested in the specifics of any person. I'm not going to measure them against that. What I'm looking for are what are the gaps that I need to operationalize. It's that last column. You know, how do I transform this team? That's my primary goal. If I get that done, the rest of the stuff will. Yeah. I know there's a question over.
Thank you. That was an amazing presentation. Quick question on the career development part where you have quarterly meetings. I'm just new to the idea of having that conversation, so just curious, how do you have that conversation? And if someone from your team wants to have that conversation with you, how do they approach you for such a thing?
So I formalize it. I just say, this is something we're going to all do, okay? Every one of my direct reports and with every one of their direct. So that's one of those, in the monthly meeting, I'm saying, this is something we're going to start doing. So now it's not negotiable. It's not, no one has to approach anyone. The leader should be scheduling it with the person. Now, how you undertake that actual conversation, most recently I've started with the blob bridge. Where are you at? Okay, where are you at relative to your career development? I'm, realistic with people. Where do you want to get? And then there's somebody who was talking about the 3 whys. I don't know if you know the story about the 5 whys, why you should ask 5 whys. No? So is it the Washington Memorial, the sort of short, squat one with the lake in front of it? So anyhow, there was all this, was it? Which one? The Lincoln. No, not the one at the end of the mall, the one that's sort of opposite the White House. I think it might be the Washington. Could be.
Washington one's tall.
Not the tall one, the short, squat, sort of rotunda. Anyhow, here's the story behind it. So they were having to wash it. Birds were crapping all over this thing, and they were having to wash it regularly. And what was happening was that they were starting to damage the memorial. So they asked the first why. Why is it, why are we having to wash this? Well, it's the birds. Okay, second question, why are the birds there? Okay, well, they're there at night. Why are they there at night? Okay, because the lights get turned on. Why, or they were eating the mosquitoes. Why were the mosquitoes there? Because they were turning the lights on at dusk. So what do? Turn the lights off until later, no mosquitoes, no birds, they didn't have to clean it. So having the career conversation, why do you want to be a CMO? Because my father expects me to. Real conversations. Why? Why does your father want you to? Why? And get to the root cause and then help them solve for that. Because in this particular individual's case, it was a very abrasive, very forcing everything on. Remember, build bridges, not walls. He was building castles around him, alienating everybody. And it came back to this relationship that he had with his father. Didn't have anything to do with work. But once we got to that, then we could work on this together to start saying, this is counting against your objective. You know, that's the kind of stuff that can happen in these conversations, but every one of them is unique. Every single one of them is unique.
And I could share my firsthand experience in these conversations that I have with him. That was the foundation, but every time we meet, I'm the driver. It's my professional development. So when we meet, I come prepared, but his first question is, how do you think you've progressed? You know, versus him telling me. So it's all on me because it takes each and every one of us to drive our own professional development, but we need to seek our mentorship and advocacy from our managers. So I hope that helps too.
Yeah, good point.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, thank you, John. Round of applause.